So Baruch Hashem, it's a privilege to be here again. I think I was here previously a year ago in the same Mesgeres. And I just came in a few moments ago from Philadelphia. We spent a very special Shabbos with 14 Shiurim since I got in Thursday. And Baruch Hashem, we hope many more till after the next Shabbos. So we're living in a very difficult period. And as you all know, in Eretz Yisrael, a war is going on. A war which started on Simchas Torah. Simchas Torah is a day which may be the happiest day in the Jewish year. Well, the Rambam writes, Sofer Cheslulav, that Sukkot is a man of Simchi Asera, but in practicality, Simchas Torah is a day of the greatest Simcha. When Kol Amchu Beis Yisrael rejoice and dance with Sifra Torah, and at that very same day, a terrible tragedy struck, and we experienced sights and experiences that we thought will never come back after the Shoah, after the Holocaust. And 1,200 Yidden were just murdered, not soldiers, not in battle, just murdered, mutilated. And since then, a war is raging, and every day, chalolim. Every day, soldiers are getting killed. And since Simchas Torah, I always have a very busy schedule, Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem, life is supposed to be busy. And we're supposed to be serving Klal Yisrael. And my time is usually divided between Arbotzes Torah and writing Shuvas and trying to help people in Chesed. But since Simchas Torah, I've been inundated with far more shilas. I wrote about 50 tshuvas just regarding the Malchama. And today I was asked to discuss some of the fundamentals. So the first burning question is Shmira Shabbos and Kashas during a Malchama. Bechlal, many times when I'm asked questions from the medical establishment in Eretz Yisrael and the security establishment in Eretz Yisrael, whether it's the army or the police or the Shabak or the Mossad, and we deal with questions in which we have very little sources in Shalos and Shuvas or even in Chazal for a very simple reason. It's been thousands of years since Klal Yisrael ran a state, ran a Malchus. Shlomo Melech probably was the last one. And we don't have Shalos Tshuvas, Shlomo Melech Yisrael. We only have one tshuva from Shlomo Melech. I hear a baskol, which we don't usually hear. We only have one tshuva from Shlomo Melech Yisrael. And we actually learned somewhat a peculiar tshuva, an interesting one without many sources. So when we deal with questions regarding running a modern state, there are some very grave questions. But number one is Shmira Shabbos in a battlefield. So the Makar is a Mishnah Shabbos Yutes. And in the very same Braisa, a Braisa not a Mishnah. Ein Tzoron ale Yoresh Anochrem, Gimel Yomim Lefnei HaShabbos. V'hem etchilu, ein mafsikin. So in the Mishnah we find two halachas. Are they the same, two sides of the same coin, or two different halachas? Ein mafligen besvene Gimel Yomim Lefnei HaShabbos. Im efligu, it is legitimate to be on a ship. but you don't embark on a sea journey, Gimel Yomim Lifnei HaShabbos. Ein Tzorin, you don't lay a siege on an enemy city, Gimel Yomim Lifnei HaShabbos. Im Etchilu, Ein Mafsikin. The Rif, Sechet Shabbos Dav Zayin, Dapei HaRif, and the Rambam Perek Lamed Aloch Yud Gimel Melech Shabbos. Both explain both halachas in the Mishnah. Mishum Oinig Shabbos. So the first few days when you're on the sea, in English it is described as seasickness. People don't feel well. They're nauseated, they vomit a lot, and that is the reason Ein Mafligim Besvini Gimel Yom Lefnei Shabbos. And the same reason goes for Ein Tzorin Al Ayorois. For the first few days you lay a siege, there is so much tircha and so much work and so much effort goes into it that it'll diminish Oinig Shabbos. The Baal HaMor has a totally different approach, and the Baal HaMor says it is Nere Kemasne Lechaleles Shabbos. There are situations in which Chilul Shabbos is inevitable, and it's Pikuach Nefesh, but you need to avoid a situation in which it is Nere Kemasne Lechaleles Shabbos, as if you planned Chilul Shabbos. And that is why Gimel Yomim Lifnei Shabbos, Ein Mafligim Esvena, Ve'ein Tzorin Al Ayorois Shel Nachrim. These are activities that will always incur Chilul Shabbos, and there's no other way about it. But nevertheless, if you could, do it at the beginning of the week. Shaloye Nere Kemasne Lechaleles Shabbos. So we won't go into great details, but the Brisa brings Imetchilu, Ein Mafsikin, Shama Yazoken Hoyu Oimar, Ad Rideta Afilu B'Shabbos. So the Pasuk says, you build a siege, Alo Iyar, when we fight the enemy, Ad Rideta. Shama Yazoken says, Ad Rideta Afilu B'Shabbos. And the question is, why do we need a Pasuk to permit Chilul Shabbos B'Shas Melchama? Sfas Emes. B'makor HaSugya, Shabbos Daf Yutes. Sfas Emes Zot, Melchama Deiche Shabbos. And even if it is not Mishum Pikuach Nefesh, and we don't need to plan every maneuver and every military move, is it Pikuach Nefesh or not? And that's what we learn from the Gzeres HaKosev, Ad Ridito. So this Sfas Emes, for those of you that don't know, is an amazing sefer. The Derech HaLimud of the Sfas Emes says he didn't learn Rishonim, he didn't learn Poskim. At Geler Gemara Rashi in Tosfos, and he wrote to Oris. And it's most obvious in Sfas Emes al Masechet Shabbos, because he constantly asks the kashas of the Rashba, of the Ran, of the Rosh on the spot. And usually the Terutzim of the Sfas Emes are the same Terutzim as the Rashba and the Ran. And that proves his greatness, his godless, and his yashless. So the Sfas Emes is Machadish. Ad Rideta, why do we need a Posuk? Isn't every war involving Pikuach Nefesh? Why do we fight wars? Dr. Sfas Emes, from here we learn that it is not that Soros Nefoshes as Deiche Shabbos, but rather Melchama Deiche Shabbos. I said this Sfas Emes wasn't aware of the Rashba and the Ran on the spot, so we wouldn't expect him to be aware of the Chuvas Arivash and Siman Kuf Aleph. Kodam Loi, Chuvas Arivash and Siman Kuf Aleph, and the Rivash. In times of war, we do not need to make a cheshbon. Is Sakona involved or Pikuach Nefesh involved? That's the din of Ad Ridito. But on the Brisa, it's Shama Yazoken, and usually Ein Alochik is Shama Yazoken. Is this a Remez Ba'alma or Mamish Gzeres HaKosev? So twice in Rambam, Perik Beis Alocha Chofei Melech Shabbos, Perik Vav Alocha Yud Aleph Melches Melochim. The Rambam brings this Alocha twice, and in both sources, the Rambam quotes the Posek Ad Ridito. So what we learn from the Rambam, it's not just an asmachta. The Lashon of the Rambam in Shabbos is Mepia Shmuel lo madno Ad Ridito after Shabbos. And whenever the Rambam uses this nusach, this formula, Mepia Shmuel lo madno, it is Halacha l'Moshe Messinai. So according to the Rambam, it's Gzeres HaKosev. And if it is Gzeres HaKosev, that would substantiate, that would be mechazik, the mahalach of the Rivash and the Sfas Emes, that in Melchama, Gzeres HaKosev. And we do not need to figure out every maneuver every military move, is it involving pikuach nefesh, hatzolas nefoshes, or not? That's the nature of melchama. But it is a chiddush, and the Rishonim on the spot, we do not find that pshat, that interpretation, ad ridito. So in the Braise said Shamei Azoken. When there's a machloikis by Shamei and Besila, the loches ke Besila. But here we do not find the machloikis, and therefore the Rambam maintains that Afar Pisha Shamei Azoken is the one that says ad ridito for B'Shabbos halochi kemoisoi. Yerushalmi Shabbos Yud Gimel, we find the same Braise. And the Yerushalmi brings two sources that Melchama Doiche Shabbos ad redito, and the Yerushalmi it's not quoted in the name of Shamei Azukan, but rather Stomed de Braisa, and also Yerichoi. So it's Mavur and Novi that Yerichoi Nichbash b'Shabbos. And why did they conquer Yerichoi and Shabbos? It is from here that we learn that Asiyas Melchama Doiche Shabbos. Might be a machloikis between the Rivash and the Radbaz. The Radbaz was a contemporary of the Rivash, Shnei Gedolei Olam, going back 500 years. So where is the Radbaz? Not in Shuvas Radbaz, but rather in Radbaz al Rambam. Perek Ches Halacha Aleph Mehilchas Malachim. And the Rambam in Perek Ches in the beginning in Hilchas Malachim deals with another halacha. We started off with Shabbos Yutes, and now we are in Chulin Daf Yud Zayin. Afidlu kadle de chazira, botem meleois kol toiv. The pasuk says, when we conquer a city from our enemy, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us botem aleim kol toiv, afilu kadle de chazira. So in Chulin Zayin we learn, and this is the halacha that Rambam brings, Perek Ches halacha Aleph. Kosav Rambam. You know, I just walked in, so I don't have a Rambam before my eyes, but if I could have a Rambam Hilchas Malachim, it's interesting to note the lashon of the Rambam. The Rambam writes, when we wage war, we have a Rambam, we have one. Perek Ches, Halacha Aleph. Chalutz Eatzovo Keshekansu Begvul HaGoyim, V'yichbeshu Oisam, V'yishbu Mehen, Muta Lehem Lechon Avelis Atrefes Abosachazi, V'kiyoyse Bo Yimroa V'lo Yimotza Mayoichel, Elam Acholomelo, Asurim. V'chein shoysi ha'nesach mepi hashmua lamdu ubotam aleim kol toiv arpe chazirim v'kiyoytze behem. Kosav Rambam. When we wage war and we conquer an enemy city, muter lechoil nevelis treifis bosachazar v'kiyoytze boy. And the Rambam once again uses the lashon mepi hashmua lamdu botam aleim kol toiv afilu arpe de chazira. However, the Rambam writes, Imroav v'loy motze mayoichal. The Radbaz, Perush al Rambam asks, Imroav v'loy motze mayoichal, and they're starving from hunger. What's the chiddush? Why do we need a posik botam aleim kol toiv? Pekuach nefesh doiche kol ha'torah kulo. So the Radbaz writes, it is not a pekuach nefesh situation. It's not a situation in which they will starve from hunger. They could bring kosher food. However, they're not mechuyev to do so. And the Radbaz writes a chiddush that we must analyze and understand. Kosav Radbaz, they could make an effort, leave the camp, and bring kosher food, but that might cause sakana. As we know, in times of war, danger could lurk every alley, every house. To our dismay, it's happening in Gaza all the time. The enemy could ambush our soldiers, and therefore, we are not mechuyev to make an effort to bring kosher food, even though it would not be defined by halachic criteria as a sakon or a pekuach nefesh situation. The Minchas Chinuch, Tov Chov Daled. The same we find in the Netziv, Chidushim Alashas Erevin Mem Heyom Edalef. The same we find the Brisker of Alachumish on the Haftorah of Parshas Beshalach. 3 Gedolei Olam, 3 different signoinos of Limud, Minchas Chinuch, Netziv, and the Brisker of, and all say the same Yisoid. B'shas Melchama, there is no din of pikuach nefesh. which means every melchama demands sacrifice. In the Yiddish Geschichte, in Jewish history, I think there are only 1.5 melchamas in which we won a war without casualties. Why do I say 1.5? Sancherev came with a mighty army to conquer Yerushalayim, and one night before the battle was supposed to start, Kadosh Baruch Hu wiped out his entire army, and in the morning they were all Pegora Mason. What a victory, without firing one shot. Halavai. Halavai, it should happen tomorrow morning. Halavai. But it hasn't happened since Sancherev came to conquer Yerushalayim. What is the other source? Yevamos Samach Aleph Amud Aleph, Melchemes Midyan. In Posek steht, V'lo nifkad mimenu ish. There's a machlokes in the Gemara whether the nifkad mimenu ish, that no one was killed, or no one was nitma betumas meis. That's a machlokes in Yevamos Daf Samach Aleph. But b'derech hateva, every war, even the most successful one, comes with a price. And l'davin lev, many are killed. So the Minchas Chinuch Netziv and the Briskerov says that's the nature of war. War overrides pikuach nefesh. In civilian life, Rabbi Kiva teaches us in Bov Metzia Samach Beis Chayecho Koid Manachai Chavecho, not b'shas melchama. B'shas melchama, soldiers are required to put the life of citizens or their comrades before their own. Chayech Chavecho Koid Manachayecho. And a Melech Yisrael is entitled even to go on a Melchemes Reshus, disregarding Pikuach Nefesh. So this is a Yesod, but the Radbaz teaches us Pshat in Rambam. Yes, it is inevitable that soldiers die b'shas melchama, but you don't put their life in jeopardy more than needed if it's not combat, and therefore they could bring kosher food, but it might be a sakana, and therefore the Torah is matia. It's not pikuach nefesh. If they would be dying for hunger, we could try to bring kosher food, but we shouldn't do so because we might be putting the soldier's life in danger. That's the pshat of the Radbaz. And that is the Gzeres HaKosav of Botam Aleim Kol Toiv. The Ramban Perush al Torah Eschanan, Parshas Eschanan Choylek al Rambam. And the Ramban says, Kadle de Chazira b'shas melchum is hutro, not dechuyo. Lo kedivrei Rambam, the Rambam writes, Im hu roiv v'lo imotzu ma lechol. He's not hungry. They have enough kosher food. V'yafol piken a Torah etira naveles treifes bosachaze ya'inesach and macholas asurais. So the Svas Emes and the Poshet Pshat are a machloikis between the Radbaz and the Ramban. Radbaz, according to the Rambam, and the Ramban. The Ramban says it's hutro, not duchuyo. And that is the Rivash and the Svas Emes lagabe Shabbos. Shabbos, according to the Rivash, fits in with the Ramban and Katle de Chazira. The Radbaz says it's a gather of the Chuyo, and that's Pshat in the Rambam. They are hungry, v'lo imotzu ma lechol. It's not pikuach nefesh. They could bring kosher food, but they don't need to do so and put lives in jeopardy. And the Radbaz, when he speaks about Kadla de Chazira Macholas Asurais, he alludes to the other drosha, Ad ridito afilu b'Shabbos. So these two halachas might be one and the same. So generally speaking, halacha l'maaseh, it is impossible to determine every military maneuver. Is it pikuach nefesh? Is it not pikuach nefesh? Could we postpone it? Could we wait? One thing is clear. If the enemy would know that we don't initiate and we don't attack on Shabbos, then they would take advantage of that fact, and many, many people will lose their lives, and therefore, halacha l'maaseh, especially if we have the Svas Emes and the Rivash. The Rivash is one of the Rishonim. B'shas Melchama, Hatzlocha b'Melchama overrides Shabbos, not based on the halacha of Pikuach Nefesh, similar to Shittas Haramban Lagabe Macholes Asures. So at the beginning of this war, I dealt with various different shilas. So the war started in our Shetach, in our territory, when in Simchas Torah, thousands of terrorists overran many towns in southern Eretz Yisrael, and their inhabitants were murdered and their houses destroyed. And in the first few days, the army was so shocked and so unprepared that the soldiers didn't have food. Food wasn't brought down. And the commanders told them, eat whatever you found in the houses. And most of those towns were not from people. So the soldiers didn't know the food that we're finding in their homes, is it kosher or not? Definitely not the hechsher from the Eidah Charedis. And they asked me, could we eat? And I said, you definitely could eat, and you don't need the Ramban for the Seter because soldiers were hungry and they had nothing to eat. And soldiers fighting a war must be at their best. They must be keen and alert and healthy and fine and strong. So I said, eat whatever you could find there, and you don't need to be choishish. Come out, all the food in Eretz Yisrael has a basic hechsher, so we don't eat Rabbanut, but it's not kadle de chazire, it's not neveles etreifes and chazia and yayin nesach. So my psak was, the army didn't bring down food. I said, eat whatever you find. And the other part of the question was, days later, weeks later, when they were already deep in Gaza, and still, so the army gives rations. The army doesn't really give cooked food, warm food. And there were thousands of people, volunteers, most of them Haredim, that went out of the way and brought tons of food, kushel amahadim, but not always was that available. And sometimes the soldiers were hungry and they asked, could we eat what we find in those Arabs' homes? And I said, well, try definitely not to eat meat because that is mamish neveles etreifes. But any vegetables or fruits you find, you definitely could eat, and it's not mechuyev b'tumas hamaisis. And a commander asked me, first days of the war, I told my soldiers to eat whatever they find in the Jewish homes. And then the tzaddik asks me, was it gezela? Do we need to try to find those people and compensate them for the food that we ate? And I said, no, this needs to be your last concern. First of all, it's matzel mezutei shel yam, when those families were murdered and people escaped, kol oid nafsham bum, whatever they left, they just left. And if you would ask those people whether they prefer the soldiers that came to save them and to fight their enemies, whether they are masking, they should eat the food they left at home, I'm sure what the answer would be. So many shilas that came to me during this period just moved me to tears, and I cried. How many tzaddikim we have down there giving their lives and sacrificing their lives. It's unbelievable, the questions that have come to me, which reflect such a deep yiras shamayim, which is very moving and very inspiring. So that is one topic. Topic number two is Birchas HaGoyma. Let's talk about something which is more refreshing and happier regarding the Malchama. So I had many different shaylas regarding Birchas HaGoyma. A soldier that has a leave 2 or 3 days, he comes home for Shabbos, and Motzei Shabbos he needs to go back to war. Does he say Birchas HaGoyma when he comes home? Simin Reish Yutes. Abot Sicham Lahoides. Those that come back from a journey in the desert or in the ocean, seafarers or in a river. Yordayam, Holchim et Boriois. And the Mishnah Berurah brings all the poskim. If you're in the middle of the desert and you have a stop and you are at an oasis in the middle of the desert, a motel or a pundak, or if you dock in a certain port on your way home in a boat, you don't say Birchas HaGoyma until you get home. So how would we judge a soldier that is home for Shabbos, but right after Shabbos, he's going back, and I pass him, you do say Berchas HaGoyimel because you're home. You're not in the middle of the way. Motzei Shabbos, you're going back to war. That is like a person that came home from one journey, and he plans another one. You're home, you say Berchas HaGoyimel. Another question that was brought to me. Soldier comes home for 2 days, and he gets married, back off to war. I have a Choshev, Talmud Chochem, a friend in the 5 towns of Daniel Feldman, who was interviewed by the Wall Street Journal, and they asked him, how strange are Jews and Jewish soldiers that are home for 2 days and they get married? Which normal girl would want to marry a soldier that's going off to war, and who would want to get married when he's going off to war? This is strange with you Jews. And he tried to explain, yes, we are a strange people. We are different than all the others. We are a people of faith. We believe in a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and we always cling to life. Our enemies cherish death and exalt death, and we believe that a Kodesh Baruch Hu will bring us safely home. And I must tell you a story, very moving story. If anybody knows the story, it comes from me. So one of the Gedolim in Chicago, post-Holocaust Chicago, was Reb Hershel Meislish. He was the Dayan in Weizen for the Holocaust. He wrote Choshev Sforim, Satmar HaChosed, a Gevaldige Talmud Chochem. One of the Sforim he wrote is Mekadshe Hashem, which is a compilation of tshuvas written by Gedolim that perished in the Holocaust, that were killed, and they should have a Shem V'Sheres B'Yisrael. He compiled many tshuvas. He printed a sefer, Keshmoy Keinu, Shalas Tshuvas Mekadshe Hashem. An introduction to that sefer, he writes about his experiences in the Holocaust and shilas he needed to paskin, and it's one of the most important documents, Rabbonish documents of shilas and tshuvas and Mesiras Nefesh in the time of the Holocaust. I recommend trying to achieve that sefer Mekadshe Hashem and reading the introduction. So Reb Hershel Meislish told me a story. The Kloisenberger Rebbe, Moiri Verabi, the Heilige Kloisenberger Rebbe, as we all know, lost his wife and 11 children in the Holocaust. His oldest son was Lipa, and he was Bovis Einoi. He was 19 years old. He was a big Ilui. He survived the war, and 2 weeks after it was over, he died from typhoid, from typhus, and it was devastating to his great father. So Reb Hershel Meislish told me a story. Modgereta Shidduch and Lipa, the Kloisenberger Rebbe's son, was supposed to get engaged with his oldest daughter. And when they planned the Tanoim, the Nazis invaded Hungary. And everything was up in chaos. And the Rebbe decided, it's not the time to do a simcha. Let's wait ad yavor zah. No one imagined how many millions will be murdered ad yavor zah. You know, they hoped in Hungary that the Hungarian government will stand up against the Germans and the Jews won't be harmed. 15 months passed. And Reb Hershel Meislish heard that the Kloisenberger Rebbe is alive and he's in Fehrenwald. And he traveled down to Fehrenwald. And he came into the Rebbe's home. And the Rebbe, B'Shem V'Malchus, made a brocha mechaya mesim. And his first question was, did your daughter survive? And the Weizenrov said, yes, she did. And the Kloisenberger Rebbe broke down crying. And he said, my Lipa died 3 weeks ago. Maybe if we would do the Shidduch, the combined schus of both of them would stand for my son and he would live. That's what the Kloisenberger Rebbe said. So these young soldiers coming home for a day or two from the army and getting married, let us hope that the combined schus of a chosen and a kala that planned to build a bayis godel b'yisol or Beistein, and he should come safely home. So the question I was asked, he's back in the field, and his friends want to make him happy. Could they say Sheva Brachos without a kala? In normal circumstances, who would make Sheva Brachos without a kala? Where's the kala? Strange times bring strange questions, and I hope we could give normal tshuvas for strange questions. So my psak was, no, you can't say Sheva Brachos without a kala. Maybe the last bracha, Ashabora bracha achrita. So we discussed some of the interesting shilas that come up during such difficult and strange times. But let me share a few feelings with you in these difficult days. So Jews from the entire world are coming to Eretz Yisrael, practically from almost every kehillah. I've seen people from Flatbush, from Passaic, from LA, from Panama, from South America, from everywhere. And many of them come to me after they visit the South and other places. And I tell them, are you aware that you are insane? And most of them are surprised and they say, no, we were not aware. Why does the Rav think we're insane? And I said, because there's a war raging here and you should stay away. You go down south, you might get a rocket on your head, and there are terror attacks. So for the past year and a half, a war is raging in the Ukraine, and I'm not aware that hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians from the entire world are coming to Ukraine to visit Lviv and Odessa and Kiev. I know that 100,000 Ukrainians ran away and 1 million Russians left Russia. So we are insane. And Baruch Hashem, it proves the strength of Klal Yisrael. In times of pain, we just read Shabbos, Kulonu b'nei ish echod nachnu. Every Yid feels a kesher. Arevim kol Yisrael zeh b'zeh. And people come to Eretz Yisrael and they don't even know why. They want to feel, they want to see, and they want to try to be helpful. Everybody wants to try to be helpful. So my message to you is you could be helpful sitting here in Lakewood. You could be helpful. Klal Yisrael doesn't win wars just by sheer force. Hashem ish melchama. And we believe in Divrei Chazal and Makes Daf Yud, Oim do Yisoyo Ragleinu B'Melchama B'Zchus Shar Yerushalayim Shoyske B'Toyer. Yes, we need an army, because that's Derech HaTeva. And just like in medicine and in every other field, we need to do our full shtadlis b'derech HaTeva. So we need the best army with the highest motivation, and I believe we have that, but that is not enough. We win wars b'schus Torah, b'schus Tefillah. We know how to win wars, and Chazal say b'schus Shar Yerushalayim Shoiskim B'Tzvah. Twice in Shas, Megillah Daf Gimel Sanhedrin Mem Dalet, Chazal tell the story of Yeshua ben Nun. B'Shas Melchemes Mitzvah Kibush Eretz Yisrael, Yeshua goes out by night and he sees a general and he is baffled. And he asks this warrior, this officer, Halonu atim litzorenu. Yeshua ben Nun knew his senior officers and he doesn't recognize the person. And his uniform is strange to him. And he asks him, are you friend or foe? Do you belong to our side or the enemy side? And the general answers, Loi, Isartzo Hashem Anoichi. I'm not a mortal. I'm not human. I'm a malach, and I was sent with a message to you. And what is that message? Emesh bitaltem tumet shel beinu arbayim v'hayim bitaltem en ha-Torah. Bittul Torah. And what does Yeshua do? Ve'yolan b'toich ha'emek melamed shelan b'umko shel haloch. And my question is, why umko shel haloch? Why not osik b'toira? So I wasn't there. If I would be there, maybe I would tell the malach, finished a maven of malachim. I don't know much about malachim. Maybe you're a big malach, but you don't remember Shas, because in Saita Mem Daled there's a Gemara meforeches that b'Shas Melchemes Mitzvah you put them in a mitzvahs. Oisik b'mitzvah put them in a mitzvah. B'kol mitzvah sheyev shel asoyis de acherim doichet talmid Torah. That's the Gemara Moed Kotten Daftes. Maybe Yeshua did ask. And my guess is, what did the malach say? Yeshua, open your eyes. You don't understand what you're seeing. Look at me again. The malach says, if I would be sent min hashamayim ledeboya el boino shel toiro, I would wear a hamburg and a frack. I would be dressed up like a Rosh Hashiva. If the issue would be Talmud Torah. If I would be sent min hashamayim to talk to you about Chassidus in your shamayim, probably I would be wearing a shtreimel and a kaftan, maybe Weiss zoken. Look at me. I'm in full military gear. I'm dressed up in a military uniform. Bosi levake shel boino shel melchoma. It's not about mitzvahs Talmud Torah. It's about war. Jews don't win wars with bittul Torah. It cannot be. It cannot be. We need Torah to win this war. And that's why I was sent min hashamayim. Bosi lidroi shel boino shel malchoma. If you want to be successful in this war, it can be at the expense of bittul Torah. And that is why Yeshua, v'yolem b'toicha eimek, lam b'umko shel haloch. This brings me to Tone de Be'elayo Rabbe Perik Yud. And if not everybody knows what is Tone de Be'elayohu, that's a Gemara in Ksubas Kuvav Omid Aleph. Eliyahu Novi learned with one of the Amerom Rav Onon, and that's Tone de Be'elayohu. And a Perik Yud, Tone de Be'elayohu is Mefarish a posek in Shiras Devoira in Sefer Shoiftim. Yivchar Elokim Chadoshi. Mogen im Yeroe v'roimach ba'arbom elef mi-Yisrael. Arbom elef mi-Yisrael sheyotzer l'machomom. Yesh belehem zugechot shel talmid hachachomim. Ani matzi leskilop. Ashrei mi shedivrei Torah meschad shem al yodoi. U'b'schusoi oimer HaKadosh Baruch Hu ani matzi l'Yisrael. And once again, the Torah of the video is Mefarish Yifchar Elokim Chadoshim. Chadoshim is Chedushei Torah. Why dafke Chedushei Torah? Libi Yoima. The Posek says, Mogein im Yeroah, V'roimach baroboam elef Yisrael. What are the Mogein and the Roimach? The Mogein is a defensive weapon, which in days of yore, the warrior held a shield in his left hand to defend himself. And the Roimach is an offensive weapon which he holds in his right, and he tries to kill the enemy. So the Mogen and the Roimach were transferred 10,000 times since days of yore to the modern battlefield. It is no longer a Mogen and a Roimach, and soldiers no longer fight each other face to face. The Mogen and the Roimach are infantry and artillery and armor and planes and missiles and cyber warfare and who knows what else, special ops. But still, every army must invest in offense and in defense. Otherwise, it will never win a war. Keneged ha-mogen va-roimach. Of the battlefield, we need the Mogen in Roimach Shemalchamto Shel Toiro. And that's the Makshe and the Tartzen. The Makshe is offensive, and the Tartzen tries to be Miyashev, and that is defense. Zele Umazeh also Elokim. Malchamto Shel Toiro gives strength to soldiers in the battlefield. And anybody that learned in yeshiva or in koil knows what Chedushei Torah are. How will we mechadish chidushim? What did the Bali Tosfos do? They had 1,000 kashas, which bred 3,000 terutzim, and every teretz is a chiddush, and many terutzim are chidushe halacha. Ashrei mi shedivrei Torah meschadsham al yodoi, mogenim yeroa v'ramach b'shviloi ani matzi les Yisrael. So I'm now speaking in Lakewood, Ir HaTorah. Every yeshiva bocher, every avrech, learning in kollel, his kashas and his teritzim, amogen v'aroimach, Torah. This is how you could be helpful. You don't need to travel to Eretz Yisrael to be helpful. You could be helpful sitting here in Lakewood. And if you learn Torah, learn better and learn more. Lo met shuachas yilmed shatayim. Lo met daf echod yilmed shnei dapim. Another few kapitlech Tehillim every day. Daven more and daven better. Learn more and learn better. Because if you believe in Divrei Chazal, if you believe in Divrei Chazal and you care, how could you not learn? If you care about Nefoshes MiYisrael, if you care about Tayrim that are dying every day, and you believe in Divrei Chazal, how is it possible that you're not learning more or you're not davening better? So yes, this is our war, not only their war. And Tayrim are davening every day, dying every day. Many of them, Talmidei Chachamim, many of them that I knew, just got a message yesterday that a soldier just a day before he was killed was learning Minchas Oshem, and he died a day later. One of my greatest supporters, his son-in-law is badly injured, and I would ask you to daven, and if you could write down his name, Nisan El Yankov ben Yehudis Soro, then he's at a Refuah Shalem, Nisan El Yankov ben Yehudis Soro. 2 weeks ago, there was a terrible terror attack in Yerushalayim, and a Choshev Dayan was killed, Rav Wasserman, and another Choshev Dayan who learned in my kollel is badly injured, and he also needs a refuah. Avidan Moshe ben Mina Rivka, he still needs a Refuah Shalem, a Choshev Talmid Chochem that was hurt in a terror attack. So this is everyone's war. It is our war. So you need to learn more and learn better in the schus of Talmud Torah, like Chazal promise. My great Rebbe, the Kloiser Mager Rebbe, used to say, "Ein lanu lehishoen ela al Avinu shebeshamayim." We usually say this in a Nebuch Dikaton. Oh, kaele miskanim. With such a nebuch, ein lanu leishon elo al Avinu shebeshamayim. He said we should shout that out loud and clear. Bekoil Godel. When we realize she'ein lanu leishon elo al Avinu shebeshamayim, we have Avinu shebeshamayim, and if we have Avinu shebeshamayim, we need no one else. We need no one else, not the Americans and not the UN. And when we reach the feeling and the conclusion, she'ein lanu leishon elo al Avinu shebeshamayim, Kodesh Baruch Hu never let us down. He never lets us down, and he never will let us down. We are the people of miracles. We are Am HaNetzach. My Rebbe used to quote a lot, and so do I. Rabbi Yankov Emden, in the introduction to Siddur Shar Shemayim, one of the most famous Choshev Sidurim, writes, Chai Roishi, Kasher ani misboinen, when I observe Kiyum Yisrael begolus, Se achas ben shivim ze'evim, Godel hanes hazeh b'yeina yoyse mekol hanisim shenasu lavoseinu b'Mitzrayim alayamu b'Yeretz Yisrael. Rabbi Yankov Emden wrote this more than 300 years ago. Kiyum's Klal Yisrael begolus is a greater nest than Aseres Hamakas Kriyas Yamsuf and Mamed Har Sinai. And I wonder, what would he write today? What have we been through in the last 300 years? How many nisyonos, beruchnis, begashmias, No one believed 80 years ago after the Kol Hagos that this is how we will be today. No one believed. What would Rabbi Yaakov Enden write today? I could only imagine he would write that this is a greater miracle than Bria Shemayim Vodas. I don't know what else is left to write. And Baruch Hashem, we're doing well. We're doing fine. Yes, with assimilation. But we're growing in numbers. We're growing every day closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's a tremendous chizuk in the entire Jewish world. I was just in Philadelphia past Shabbos, and I was told that 30 conservative temples are now Orthodox, Hamish-Eden. It's happening everywhere. Baruch Hashem, we're doing fine. We're doing fine, b'siyata d'shmaya. And this is the greatest nace. It's the greatest miracle. Because b'derech hateva, the Jews should have been 3 pages in history books. Somewhere between ancient Troy and the Roman Empire, it would be written. There was a people, they called themselves the Jews, and they claimed to be descendants of the patriarchs of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And they rose on the stage of history so-and-so BC, and their demise was so-and-so AC when their temple was destroyed in Yerushalayim. That would be natural. But Baruch Hashem, we're around. We're not history. We are around. וכל דור ודור עומדים עלינו לחלויסנו, והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו מידם. And 80 years ago, the most modern Haman planned the final solution. He didn't know what the final solution is. The final solution is B'korah b'yomeinu. Uvol l'tzion goyel u'l'shovei fesha b'Yaakov. That will be the final solution. So we are the people of miracles. And when we feel Ein lanu lehishoen el al avinu shebeshamayim, we should feel most confident and most strong, because the Kodesh Baruch Hu never lets us down when we turn back to him. So this is a time for chizuk, more Talmud Torah, more tefillah, more chesed, more achdus. Achdus is the key. And be'ezus Hashem yisborach, this war will be over. V'nosati sholom ba'oretz u'shechaftem ve'ein machrid. And we should all be zoiche b'korah b'yomeinu to tchias amesim and bias goyel tzedek and binyan beis hamikdash b'mehero v'yomeinu amen.